recording. Make sure our stream is up. Looks okay. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Good. Welcome back, and welcome also to everyone attending this satsang online. We have more nice questions. We'll continue to take questions both from our local students and from online. You can just give it to Sarika. Our first question is from Anand, who lives in Canada. No, please don't push on the bottom. You'll have to give it to me. I forgot to turn it on. Excuse me just a minute. So I put that on the bottom because it accidentally gets pushed. And then it gets turned off. People accidentally will push it, and then it gets turned off. So this is to prevent that from happening. So hopefully we won't have so many problems with this. All right, good. So first question from Anand, who lives in Canada. Anand asks, would it be accurate or inaccurate to describe the various sampradayas? Sampradaya, teaching tradition, would be a good translation of that. The various sampradayas of Hinduism, can they be described as denominations of Hinduism? The word denominations he introduces, much like the different denominations of Christianity. For example, there are various sampradayas of Hinduism founded by different teachers. They all accept Brahman, but they have different details. In the same way, Christianity has various denominations, but they have different theologies, but they all accept Jesus. Okay, so how accurate would it be to describe sampradayas as denominations? So if you want to use denominations as a translation for sampradaya, I don't think there's any harm in it, but when you know the word sampradaya, why not use that? Because the meaning is very different. So just to point out difference, I'm being really fussy about linguistics. To denote, to denominate means what? Chop everyone up into nice little groups, I think is the idea of a denomination. Noma is name. So to specify by name, I think, is the etymological meaning of denominations. Sampradaya has such a lovely meaning. Samyak, and prada, that which has come down through the ages in a well-formed manner. That's the literal meaning. So when you have such a lovely word as sampradaya, to give it up for denomination seems unnecessary. But I think Anand's comment about the similarity between Christian denominations and Hindu sampradayas, I think that's correct. Yeah, and perhaps helpful. Okay. Next question from Uma. Uma lives in Chicago, if I remember right. And Uma says she's worked her way through all 42 videos in my meditation series, that course in meditation. By the way, if you have any difficulty in getting a daily practice of meditation going, I highly recommend that. By the way, don't let 42 videos intimidate you. They're all 10 to 20 minutes long. So not hard to go through those little lessons. I really love the video on Vedantic contemplation, nididhyasana, and I introduce a technique in which you have in a moment of silence, you sink into your true nature. In a moment of silence, you continue to exist without all the trappings of humanity. You continue to exist in your true divine nature in a moment of silence, is the technique I taught in that particular video that Uma is referring to. But she continues to say, and she says, in that condition, I seek nothing, I need nothing, I am whole and complete, I am utterly unaffected. You got it. That's exactly the point of that particular meditation. But then, real life intrudes. Yes, indeed. A family member is struggling. There are important decisions to be made. My mind is back, and the bliss of my true nature evaporates. As soon as meditation comes to an end, what can you do? Meditation comes to an end, and the world is waiting for you, waiting to push your buttons as soon as you come out of meditation. So Uma asks, how do I access my true nature, especially when life is challenging? Well, life is challenging is a fact. How do I access my true nature? This is somewhat problematic. Access your true nature is always present, is it not? It doesn't come and go. So your true nature as Satchidananda is present, and it's present in every experience, whether it's a pleasant experience or a not so pleasant experience. So right now, in the midst of the satsang, which I hope is a pleasant experience, right now, Satchidananda Atma is present, Ananda. But if you, after the satsang, if some problem happens, maybe you get a headache or something else, or a family member gets a headache, and you have to help them, then in that unpleasant or less pleasant situation, is Satchidananda Atma any less present? No. So what does Uma mean by accessing her true nature? What she's really referring to is having that blissful experience in meditation. So if you want to have another blissful experience in meditation, go back and meditate. And you can have that whenever you feel like it. You know how to get there. I'm speaking to Uma. You know how to get there. You know how to do that meditation technique, so do it. But now the problem is how to access it in difficult moments. Well, in a difficult moment, you can't meditate. You can't have it both ways. You can't have the bliss of meditation and simultaneously have worldly experience. You get one or the other. So if what access means is to have that meditative experience in the midst of an unpleasant situation, it simply isn't possible, nor is it the ultimate solution. The ultimate solution is for Vedanta to go in a little more deeply. I think Uma has gotten a lot, but there's still more. There's always more to come, more to come, more to come. And what's more to come is this. If you really get it, that your true nature is Satchidananda Atma, and that Satchidananda Atma, which is your true nature, she says herself, utterly unaffected, then utterly unaffected means utterly unaffected in a pleasant situation and utterly unaffected in an unpleasant situation. But that's a matter of understanding and not a matter of experience. If you are in an unpleasant situation, you're not going to have a pleasant experience. That's just how we're wired. But you can, with the help of these teachings, you can indeed be in an unpleasant situation and know that you are utterly unaffected by the unpleasantness of that situation. I've chosen those words very carefully. You can be in an unpleasant situation and know that you in your true nature as Satchidananda Atma, you are utterly unaffected by the unpleasantness of that situation. That kind of knowledge comes. Maybe not yet, maybe more effort is required, but absolutely that knowledge, the firmness of that knowledge comes. Next question from Stefano. Stefano lives in Spain. If I remember right, he's a yoga teacher in Spain, and he uses these teachings in his yoga classes. Is your name, Swami Tadatmananda, a combination of Tat, Atma, and Ananda? Okay, explain the name. Okay. I know that when you get ordained, your guru gives you the name. Many sannyasis have names like Shivadas, Krishnadas. Is it because the guru sees that person in a particular way? Anyway, let's, okay, several questions here. First question is, yes, Tat, Atma, Ananda. And the way it's understood, remember that's a compound, it's one word. Sanskrit puts words together into compounds. And mostly these compounds yield their meaning from right to left. So start at the end. Ananda means one who is Ananda. Why? Because Atma, self, is Tat. And Tat is the pronoun that, which obviously refers to Brahman here. This is a name given by my guru, and pretty much all the names he gives are Mahavakyas. Some of the names he gives are not Mahavakyas. Why? When a disciple requests a special name, so sometimes a disciple has a name in mind, I want to get that name, and so, which is untraditional, by the way. But my guru was so compassionate that if you asked for a name, Mickey Mouse Ananda, sorry, he's so compassionate, he would give you that name. This is his compassion. His name, Daya, means compassion, but it is untraditional, and certainly I didn't ask for a name. And he gave me, in fact, there's a nice story associated with that. The rituals for sannyasa go on for about a day and a half. So at the very end only comes the name. So we're sitting on the banks of the Ganga, and it's time for him to give me a name. And he pauses. He gave me, one other person was ordained with me, initiated with me. He was given the name Atma Triptananda, the one who is Ananda because they are Tripta, fulfilled, satisfied in Atma, in the true nature of oneself. So Atma Triptananda. He just passed away. But after giving that name, then he paused, ready to give me my name. And he waited, he thought some more, And I'm sitting there and saying, uh-oh. There's some problem? Finally, he gave me this name, which is a lovely name, and he later explained, some days later, I suppose I asked him what was going on. And he explained that he was trying to find a name that was fairly short that people could pronounce in the West. How about Atma Triptananda? That's what my Guru Bhai was named. So Tadatmananda is a relatively simple, not that it's simple, but relatively speaking. And just to be a little bit more complete, so my Guru will give names based on a Mahavakya. And then Saraswati, by the way, is a lineage. Their Shankaracharya established 10 lineages. Along with each of those lineages comes a last name, so to speak, and Saraswati is the so-called last name associated with that lineage. Stefano asks about other names like Krishnadas, Shivadas. These are names given by gurus who are not part of Shankaracharya's tradition. So any guru in the tradition of Shankaracharya will give a name whose first part ends in Ananda, and the last name is part of the lineage. And final thing, and Shivadas, Krishnadas, these are names often used in ISKCON, for example, the Hare Krishna group. Do your friends, the friends before coming a Swami, and relatives call you with your birth name? Friends before coming, I became a Swami in 1993, and to be honest, I don't think any of those friends that I had when I was a young engineer in California. I haven't stayed in touch with them, so I don't know that there are any old friends who would call me by any name. What about relatives? Do they call you by your birth name? With somebody close, there's no, why force them to use the name Swami Tadatmananda? So for my parents, I never dreamed of it. I wouldn't do that. They're no more. My sister lives on the West Coast, and she is cute. My birth name was Mark, given by my parents, so she calls me Swami Mark. How's that? Well, and many call me Swami T, especially the second generation in this country, because Tadatmananda is still a lot of syllables, so Swami T is very easy. Okay. Let's take another question here. Many mystics from traditional backgrounds have been able to reveal their physical presence in 2 different locations at the same time. By location. Many mystics. I'm not sure if it's many mystics. There are maybe a handful of anecdotes describing this phenomenon called by location. And Arun lives in Bangalore, I didn't say before. And Arun goes on to give a couple of examples. And he asks, can there be any scientific explanations to such manifestation? The only way to have a scientific explanation is if you scientifically study by location. So first step is to remember science is based on observation. If there's no observation, there's no science. Right? Has a scientist ever observed this bilocation? So far as I know, the answer is no. So since no scientist has observed bilocation, there can be no scientific explanation. Notice I'm not saying it exists or doesn't exist. I don't need to, and I don't know. How can I know? All I know for sure is that no scientist has studied. If they had studied it, we'd hear about it. But no such study has taken place. Then, Diego lives in Mexico. He says, I've studied Katha Upanishad and don't understand everything. Question related to the words avyaktam and purusha, which are used in the Katha Upanishad. Now, the Katha Upanishad is probably at least 1,500 years old. So it's one of the older, I'm sorry, what did I say, 1,500? 2,500 years old. Let's say 2,000. We'll make, and my hesitancy in assigning dates represents the difficulty that scholars have in assigning dates to all of these ancient scriptures. Some scholars say this, some scholars say that, and there's a huge gap between what they say. So I'm just looking for a realistic figure. So I would say at least 2,000 years old. Actually, I would underline that number. There are some crossover between Katha Upanishad and Bhagavad Gita. There's some other evidence as well. So I think 2,000 years is a reasonable guess at the date. So for something so old, it's interesting that the teachings of Vedanta had not yet become very standardized. Today, from Shankara's time onwards, the teachings of Vedanta have been, standardized is not the right term, because it's not like, the problem with the word standardization is there's some organization who sets the standard, and there's no such thing here. But I would say there's some uniformity to the teachings and nomenclature of Advaita Vedanta from Shankara's time onwards. That's about 800 years. So for 1,200 years, 1,300 years. Got the wrong date. So for in modern times, we have a lot of uniformity, both in terms of teaching and in terms of the language used to express those teachings. But when we go well before that, we leave the uniformity behind, and we have to deal with ancient expressions, including words like avyakta and purusha, which are not part of the more typical Vedantic language that comes later. So, depending, I think in Katha Upanishad, purusha means atma. I have to go and check that, but purusha, I believe, means atma. Avyakta, literally, by the way, purusha means being, a living being, and it's used in a variety of ways. The word purusha can be used for Ishvara. The word purusha can be used in other ways as well. In the Sankhya tradition, purusha means consciousness. I'm just warning you that words have different meanings in different contexts. I think, without checking, that the word purusha in the Katha Upanishad is a synonym for atma. Then the other word he asks about is avyakta. Avyakta literally means that which is unmanifest. And in the Katha Upanishad, I'm not sure, I think avyakta in the Katha Upanishad is used as a synonym for prakriti, nature in a fundamental sense. Purusha and prakriti tend to go together as a pair, so I have a feeling, and I would really have to, and I apologize to Diego, I didn't check, but if you want, Diego, write me an email and I will check, I will confirm for you. After studying this by myself, I didn't get complete clarity. And I started wondering how many texts I will have to study on my own if you don't teach them and publish them. So Diego's struggle here is when you study it, if you study under a guru, then hopefully all of this is made clear. I don't have any video on Katha Upanishad. I think there are audios.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. There are audio recordings of my classes on Katha Upanishad. So I think our video recordings started just about 10 years ago or so. But prior to that, all of our classes were done as audio recordings. So Diego, you can go back and find those audio recordings on Katha Upanishad. You'll find them on our website. Okay, let's pause here. Do we have any questions here? In back, we have a question. You'll need the microphone. Yes, please.
Swamiji, I have been practicing a type of yoga called Bikram yoga. It's a heart yoga, 90 minutes, for 13 years. It's a meditative yoga.
Good for you. Wow. That's a very intense and demanding kind of yoga. Good.
Thank you. It's meditative yoga, so we are supposed to basically reduce the number of thoughts. Like Patanjali Yoga Sutra says, the second stanza, chitta vritti nirodha. But even after 13 years, I have not been able to completely eliminate thoughts even for a short duration of time. But it has kind of trickled down.
Sure.
It has become moderate. It
Okay.
doesn't go all over the place.
Good.
So my question is this really practical? I mean, do people who have attained that state, do they really eliminate all thoughts and still be awake? Or do they replace their mundane thoughts with some giant godly thought or noble thought?
Okay. So you correctly identified that asana, the very practice of yogasana, comes from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. He prescribed yogasana as a preparatory step for meditation. And the chitta vritti nirodha comes not because of asana, it comes with meditation. So asana in and of itself is not intended to make your mind silent. And I'm pretty sure that Bikram would not have taught that you can make your mind completely silent just through the performance of asana. So asana is a preparatory practice, and it's done you a lot of good. You're very healthy for an older man, so you're doing quite well, and definitely you should continue that practice. You asked, is it possible to make the mind perfectly silent, or is it that your mind gets filled with big thoughts of Ishvara, etc.? And yes, it is possible to make the mind perfectly silent. It's not even a big deal if you practice certain meditation techniques. So but it comes not as a result of asana practice, but it comes as a result of and to use Patanjali's language, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, the last three angas. So asana is 4. What about, and then you have to go past 5, and then 6, 7, and 8 is where you really achieve that silence of mind. Is that okay? Yes. All right. There's a question up here, please.
Pujya Swamiji, you talked about 3 states of chidabhasa. So Jagruti, Swapnavastha, Sushupti, which is because of mind, those 3 states. Interestingly, the one Sushupti, the state is obtained even when it is absent, chidabhasa. So how do we think about relationship of chidabhasa with turiya, which is not even state of mind? Is there any relationship?
Sure. Turiya, yeah, let me respond. So we in an earlier class, we discussed the relationship between these 3 states, waking, dream, and sleep, the relationship between these 3 states and consciousness. And we said that these 3 states are 3 states of mind. Consciousness has no, you correctly said, consciousness has no states. Consciousness manifest in the mind has these 3 states. Consciousness associated with the mind has these 3 states, or reflected in the mind. Chidabhasa has these 3 states. But consciousness as such has no states, you correctly said. So then the question is then, what is the relationship of these 3 states to turiya? And turiya is another common misunderstanding. It's called the 4th, but it's not a 4th state. Another trick. Everyone gets this wrong. We talk about 3 states of consciousness, and then turiya is the 4th state of consciousness. You get 2 check marks for that, 2 wrong marks for that. First of all, there are no 3 states of consciousness. There are 3 states of mind. And finally, turiya means fourth, but it's not a fourth state. Of course, if there aren't 3 states of consciousness, how can there be a fourth? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So turiya means fourth in addition to waking, dream, and sleep. In order for there to be the experience of waking, consciousness is required or not? Yeah. In order for there to be dream, consciousness is required or not? And in deep sleep, does consciousness remain or does it go away? It remains. So in addition, notice my language, in addition to waking, dream, and sleep, there's one more factor, one more principle, not a state. So turiya, the fourth, properly understood, and I admit most of the time it's not properly understood. I recognize that. But if you study the Mundaka Upanishad, and if you study Shankara's commentary and Gaudapada's Karika, if you really study it well, it becomes really vividly clear that turiya is chit, chaitanya, unconditioned consciousness. So if turiya is understood as not the fourth state, but the fourth, after you've counted 3, when you count 4, you're counting consciousness. Does that work for you? Okay, good. Let's take some more. We have several more questions here. Next question. How are we doing on time? Good. That was this question from Amit. Amit lives in India. This last year I faced lots of persistent health issues, one after another. I'm sorry, that sounds like a difficult year. I did a lot of mantra japa, meditation, prayers, and pujas in temples with not much effect on his health. Also, he's done various mantras for afflicted planets, but to no avail. What he's referring to is if you go to an astrologer, the astrologer can explain that your physical ailments are due to this particular planetary deity. And if you propitiate this particular planetary deity by certain pujas, and especially by certain mantras, you can remove that negative effect. That negative effect ends up being karma, so some papa karma that's affecting you. Really speaking, many people misunderstand this, so let me just make it clear. Planetary deities don't control your life. Some people accept astrology, and it's fine. Personally, I don't accept it at all. But if you believe that it is a valid system, I wouldn't discourage you. What I've said on this account before is that astrology could be a completely valid and precise system. The problem we face is astrologers are not always so skillful. So if you ask me, does astrology really work or not? Well, we only know through astrologers. I'm not an astrologer, so I don't know. I can't make any judgment on whether or not astrology is valid or not. I don't have the background to make that kind of judgment. But one thing I can say, based on the teachings of Vedanta, and that is that these so-called planetary deities, grahas, is the term that the astrologer would use, they do not affect your life. Clear? No, why? Astrology is a predictive science, correct? That's what it's been for. It's to find, in fact, the origin of astrology had nothing to do with your birth chart. The origin of astrology was in Vedic times, trying to find out the right time for particular rituals. That's its origin. This birth chart stuff, horoscope stuff, all comes later, much later. So you want to, if you're doing Vedic rituals, you want to know what is the best time, so you consult that. Your life also has good times and bad times. And sadly, Amit is going through a bad time. Why do lives go through good times and bad times? Don't blame them, the so-called planetary deities. You go through good times and bad times in life due to your karma. There are times in life when proportionately more good karmas are yielding their fruits. That's when everything is going nicely. Then there are other times in life where there's a preponderance of so-called bad karmas, papa karmas, which are yielding their results. A time in life where we're all born with lots of good karmas and bad karmas. Our prarabdha karma is always a mixture of both. So then the question is, which ones are fructifying at a particular point in life? If a lot of papa karmas are fructifying at one time, you're going to be miserable. What can you do until those karmas have finally fructified and you can move on? Now, the role of astrology is to try to predict when more good karmas are fructifying in your life and more bad karmas are fructifying in life. So the astrologer will look at your chart and say, Shani, the scapegoat for all bad things in life. The planetary deity associated with Jupiter, right? Or Saturn. Saturn, excuse me. You can see how much astrology I know. So anyway, so blame it on Saturn. It's for predicting. So the idea is the position of Saturn according to your birth chart is supposed to indicate a phase of life in which more papa karmas are going to fructify. So it's simply a matter of prediction. I'm sorry that Amit's going through this bad time. Good news is, if you exhaust lots of papa karmas, what lies ahead has to be better. Really, if you look at the term they use is zero-sum game. And that is, you're born with a finite amount of papa karma and a finite percentage of punya and papa. That means the more papa karmas you exhaust, the ratio of punya karmas have to go up. It's math. It's simple math. So if you exhaust more papa karmas earlier in life, according to the doctrine of karma, what lies ahead should be better. Anyway, Amit is making several other points here that I'd like to respond to. So let me just get some water. Amit concludes, so since his sadhana didn't address his physical ailments, and since his astrology-guided sadhana did not address his physical ailments, Amit concludes, so my take is that all these rituals, remedies, pujas, mantras, and japas are more for some mental relief or personal satisfaction than for any real change. Yes, I would agree partially, not completely. And first of all, they are not magic bullets to address physiological problems. Physiological problems are solved with physiological solutions. Mental problems are solved with mental solutions, spiritual problems with spiritual solutions. Okay? So none of these are aimed at removing physiological problems. Yes, they can all bring some mental relief, some satisfaction, some calmness, but there's one more factor that I would add. They're all prayers. And prayer functions by invoking Ishvara's blessings. But here's the tricky part. Ishvara's blessings are invoked in a general way. We don't know when and where those blessings will be bestowed. So just because you pray, oh God, please make this particular physical problem go away, you specify the problem, but isn't it a little... this is not with regard to Amit, but I just want to comment on a kind of childish immaturity when we look at Ishvara as some super powerful being in the heavens who can perform miracles on our behalf. If you are about to die of some terminal illness, if your heart has failed and they're just barely keeping you alive, and you pray for your heart to be restored, your ejection factor is 10%, meaning 90% of your heart is already dead. Your prayer is going to reverse that? Isn't that naive? Of course, children can ask for anything, right? You know, Mom, can I have 1,000 cookies? They can ask, but they're not going to get 1,000 cookies. We can ask childish requests. May my 90% dead heart be healed. But it's not a mature kind of prayer, is my point. I'm not saying at all that Amit was doing this, but many people do. And that's why I just wanted to bring it up here. The point in addressing Amit is that his sadhana may not have specifically addressed his physical problems, but he will still be blessed by his sadhana in some way. How and when and where, there's no way of knowing, but every prayer invokes some anugraha, some grace, and that grace is basically a good karma. And sooner or later, that good karma will fructify. But who determines when and where it fructifies? We don't get to determine. So we don't get to say that it should fructify to heal my 90% dead heart. We don't make the rules on the doctrine of karma. Let me just finish here. There's no way to quantify these things. We have to go through our karmas irrespectively. That's a very mature statement. That is, if you are in that period of time when you have a preponderance of bad karmas which are fructifying, that's the way it works. Life has ups and downs. So it is better just to go through life events rather than try to alter them through these rituals. I agree 100% with that, except with one thing. Just to go through life events, but it means you still try, you use whatever world, and I'm sure Amit is doing this, whatever worldly means can be used to address our worldly problems, of course. And Amit will do this, all of us will do this. So whatever physiological problems, whatever medical treatment can be employed, of course we make use of it. And I have no doubt that Amit has already done that. But in spite of the medical treatment, he goes on suffering, and maybe Not all medical problems can be treated, right? So then what can we do? He says better to, I'll paraphrase him, better to accept physical ailment. There's a big paraphrase. I apologize to Amit for putting words in his mouth. For medical ailments that cannot be medically treated, it is better to accept them than to try to remove them through rituals, pujas, prayers, mantras. Yes, I agree with that absolutely. I am still not at a stage where I'm based more on absolute reality than transient reality. Chronic pain issues, it becomes difficult to be based in absolute reality. We keep coming back to our body-mind situational react. And chronic pain, which apparently afflicts Amit, chronic pain is a huge problem because we tend to use our minds to find comfort, especially an advanced spiritual practitioner. I gave an example in class yesterday where I use, if I'm struggling with some physiological problem, like everyone else, I have them, I sometimes use meditation. Not to cure the problem, I use meditation to find some comfort in the presence of that problem. But here's the issue that I think Amit is referring to, and that is sometimes chronic pain can be so intense that whatever techniques you used before to find mental comfort may or may not work in the presence of intense pain. That's a tough thing to swallow, but it's just a fact. That's the nature of pain. When pain reaches a certain threshold, we can't. I need to preface this. In Vedantic language, if pain is here in your mind, figuratively speaking, and if you can put your attention over there, this is kind of a meditative practice. So you would draw your attention from the pain and you put your attention elsewhere. Reduces pain a lot. Wonderful way of gaining comfort. But sometimes the pain is so intense you have no control over that attention. Your attention is inexorably drawn to that pain, no matter how hard you try to draw it away. Then what can you do? Fortunately, there's even a solution at that level. There are powerful medications which can lessen that pain. Yes, it's true, some people are going to object. Swamiji, most of those pains are addictive. Absolutely true. Morphine is addictive. By the way, this fentanyl that everyone says is the ruin of the country, it's legitimately used for pain control. Don't think the pharmacological industry, they made it up, they made this compound to cause people to get addicted. Ridiculous. They made I'm not saying the addiction isn't a problem. The addiction is a giant problem, absolutely. And is the pharma industry involved in it? Perhaps. There's a lot of politics there also, but a lot of profit motivation going on in the industry. But one thing we know for sure is these powerful drugs, which are addictive, were not designed to make people addicted. They were designed to be used carefully under a doctor's treatment to relieve pain, and they work. They have plenty of side effects. They make you constipated, they make you drowsy, but they work on the pain. So this is all we can do. We'll take your question. So what you'll need the microphone, please.
It's almost past time here. So I came here 6 months ago and asked you a question, which was very useful to me. It helped me a lot.
Why don't you step forward and you'll be in the camera.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm
right there. Thank
right
you.
There is okay.
Yeah.
I'm not here to ask you another question 6 months later, but to present you with a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do this after you turn off the camera,
Okay.
or
Yeah, we'll do it then.
we'll do it then. Okay.
Good. What is your name, please?
My name is Prithviraj Mukherjee.
Prithvi. Good.
Raj for short.
Raj.
Like equal
Very good.
your
I'm-
Swami
Yes.
but
I'm glad you
I'm
could.
Dr. Raj to
yes.
my students.
Good.
I am an ex-Princeton staffer,
Mm-hmm.
and I wrote a book called Physics and Advaita Vedanta.
Very nice.
It touches on the lecture you gave between 10 and 11, which is
Mhm.
physics is outward-looking, laboratory-focused, whereas Vedanta is inward-looking. But in the Venn diagram, and I'll stop after this, there is a area of commonality, which is the use of logic. I use logic to take that stick and whack people who
Good.
believe that faith is the thing that you've got to
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. Good. Very
I'll
good.
stop.
Yeah.
That's my
yeah, please.
comment, not a
Good.
question.
That's quite all right. Be seated, and I'll meet with you after the class. Nice.
Thank you, Swamiji.
You're welcome. Let's take a couple more online questions, and then we'll conclude for the day. Let's take Subodhini's question. Please give her the microphone.
Sorry.
No, that's quite all right.
And this question is
Tell me.
based on my observation of myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar to Uma's, who you referred to earlier. My question is, in moments of silence, in meditation, even during acts of worship, or when I'm in places of worship, I am fully aware of the true self and non-duality of, consciousness and the all-pervasive consciousness. But when I am exposed to a world of chaos and lawlessness and oppression and suffering that is going around me so
And
much
everyone else.
all over the world,
Yes.
yeah, and everyone else, my awareness of that non-duality kind of fades away. So how do I bring non-duality in my everyday life?
You don't. That's a really good question, but it's a common misunderstanding. We live in a dual world. Do we have any choice? I want to live in a non-dual world. There's no such thing. There is no other. This is it. This is the only world you get. So the Vedantic solution is not to somehow live in a magic world in which there are no problems. You say you are fully aware of the truth of Atma. Maybe not fully, because if you were fully aware in a sense of understanding completely, thoroughly, with complete assimilation, when that takes place, there's no longer any identification with body and mind. Now, it turns out that it's only your body and mind that can be affected by all this chaos in life. The chaos in life, you already understand that the chaos in life doesn't affect consciousness. You get that. But I'm afraid that you also think that the chaos in life affects your body and mind, and that's a bad thing. That's where the problem lies. There is lingering identification with the body and mind. This is true for almost every practitioner of Advaita Vedanta. That identification with the body and mind clings, it hangs on, and hangs on tightly, and often for a long time. Until that identification with the body and mind is removed, we will continue to be affected by external things. On the other hand, when identification with the body and mind is completely removed, then you become able to be in the world without being subject to suffering. The world can't affect you. The chaos can't affect you. So it sounds like that is yet to be reached, that is yet to be attained, and that's a very common problem. Any follow-up on that?
No, not totally. So I haven't reached that level of spiritual maturity yet.
Yeah. Yes. So and it takes time. And it sometimes takes a long time. Okay, this is a question from Perry, who lives in Florida. And he said, my question is, would it be possible for anyone, regardless of their state of mind, their state of body, or state of consciousness, to reach true enlightenment? Anyone can be enlightened. According to the tradition of Advaita Vedanta and all the great wise ones who have come in before, not anyone. So a great amount of emphasis is put on the necessity for preparedness. And for Perry, there's a very fundamental principle in Advaita Vedanta that needs to be understood in this context, and that is, enlightenment is the result of gaining a particular kind of spiritual wisdom, knowledge, a spiritual knowledge which is capable of removing the so-called veil of ignorance that covers your true divine nature. So to answer your question, we first have to understand, what do we mean by enlightenment? In Advaita Vedanta, enlightenment means the removal of the so-called veil of ignorance that covers your true nature. So in simple words, enlightenment is a result of knowledge, a particular kind of knowledge that removes a particularly problematic kind of ignorance that causes suffering. Now here's why I mentioned preparedness. To gain this spiritual knowledge, you require a lot of getting ready, a lot of preparation. Like in your school days, before you can study calculus, you have to study, geometry, trigonometry, and all of this stuff. Otherwise, you won't understand that calculus. In the teachings of Vedanta, the requirements are so much higher. The bar, so to speak, is so much higher to be a fully prepared student. Therefore, and would it be possible for anyone? I don't think anyone, and just in general, can anyone there are certain limitations in life. I'm just remembering an old joke I told. Sometimes we get this idea that all we have to do in life is try hard enough. This is a very modern idea. A couple hundred years ago, your life was determined by the family in which you were born, right? In every culture around the world, and even today in some places, in rural places, your life is not determined by you. Your life is determined by the family in which you were born. Now, in modern times, we've kind of thrown that away, which is good in general. So you're free to do many things. You're not confined by your birth situation. But it's given rise to, I think, a particularly unrealistic expectation. And the unrealistic expectation is this: I can do anything. By the way, don't modern parents tell their children that? Here's the problem. It's good. I mean, it's good to be encouraging of your parents, but here's the shortcoming. You can do anything. You just have to try hard enough, work at it hard enough, be committed, be diligent, be mature. Good, good, good. All of that is wonderful. But the idea that you can do anything if you try hard enough. And this is a joke. I think I told this to a group of teenagers, and they broke out roaring in laughter. And it's this. By the way, this point is exactly 5 feet and 4 inches above my toes. And the reason that's important is this. Suppose as a young man, I decided I was going to be a world-famous basketball player. And all I have to do is try hard enough. You get my point? I mean, the world has some natural limitations, so what can we do? So in response to Perry's questions, can anyone become enlightenment? Maybe not. All right. I think maybe just one more question. Oh, this is a follow-up, and I think we'll make this the last question for today. This is a follow-up for a discussion we had last week, and let me remind you of the discussion. Somebody asked, isn't judgment between good karma and bad karma, they asked, isn't that part of the doctrine of karma? That whatever deed you do is judged as being a good karma or a bad karma. And I suggested that this idea of judgment, at least to me, doesn't sound very Hindu at all. It sounds very biblical. That's to me. The Hindu concept of God, yes, I know there are plenty of Puranic stories which have God being Puranic, but a Vedantic understanding of Ishvara, the God of the cosmos, the intelligence behind the law of karma. The Vedantic understanding is Ishvara, what's the word I'm looking for? Ishvara gives you the results of your deeds without judgment. Mechanically. You do good deeds, you mechanically, according to the laws of nature, like law of gravity, things just fall. So mechanically, you get the results of your deeds. And Ishvara doesn't micromanage. Ishvara is not a micromanager. So, given this background, then we come to this question from Rami, who lives in Cairo, Egypt. Nice. He says, in my view, judgment is associated by a force of cause and effect under observational inputs and outcomes. Isn't this a system of karma? I don't exactly understand what Rami means to say here. Associated with a force of cause and effect, I don't think cause and effect is a force. First of all, there's no force of cause and effect. There's a force of gravity, but the force of gravity is itself an effect. It's an effect of Ishvara. Ishvara is the cause. The gravity is an effect. It's not a force. I'm sorry, in that context. Under observational inputs. Observational inputs. I think that's a reference, and I could be wrong. I think he's referring to how we observe actions. We make judgments. And if that's what Rami means, that's absolutely true. We observe things and we make judgments all the time. But here's the deal, as we say in American English. Here's the deal. That sounds like a guy in Washington. and And what I mean is, you and I make judgments. Ishvara is the intelligence behind the entire universe and is utterly unlike a human being. You and I make judgments. Ishvara, the God of the cosmos, as understood in Hinduism, Rami comes from an Islamic country. Islamic countries are highly conditioned by biblical thinking, and the concept of judgment is deeply, deeply embedded in Islamic culture. But from a Vedantic perspective, Ishvara, the God of the cosmos, is utterly non-judgmental. For good deeds, we get good results. For harmful deeds, we get undesirable results, but without judgment. And without judgment is important. We judge people good, and this is fine, we'll wrap up with this comment. We judge people good and bad. Do good people do bad things? Then why do you call them good? Do bad people do good things? Then why do you call them bad? What I'm pointing out is this concept of judgment is very human and very flawed. And to attribute such a flawed and human and limited trait to the God of the cosmos, in my view, is a huge mistake. Not just in my view, but according to Advaita Vedanta. Good. And this would be a good place to conclude for today. We'll end with our prayers. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschad Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. See you next time.